When my daughter looked me in the eye and called me a washed up fossil, I felt my breathing slow and my mind sharpen with startling clarity. 23 years I'd poured into that company. My sweat, my expertise, my retirement dreams, just days away from fruition. But as her words hung in the sterile office air, I simply nodded, gathered my dignity, and walked out. She thought she was discarding dead weight. What she'd actually done was try to shortchange her own father, but I would make sure she paid full price. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. The rhythmic clang of metal on metal had been my soundtrack for 23 years, and I'd never grown tired of it. Some men chase promotions, corner offices, fancy titles, not me. Fred Morrison was perfectly content running press number 7, watching raw steel transform into something useful under my hands. 5 more days, Fred, Bill called over the machinery noise, wiping grease from his weathered palms. 5 more days and you're free as a bird. I smiled, not pausing in my work. The pension calculations had been dancing in my head for weeks. Full benefits, healthcare included, enough to live comfortably. Don't remind me, or I might start counting hours instead of days. Hell, I would be, Bill chuckled, adjusting his safety glasses. 23 years of this place putting food on your table. Your daughter's got it made now, working upstairs in that air-conditioned office while we're down here sweating. The mention of Megan made something tighten in my chest. 5 months she'd been working in human resources, and we'd barely exchanged more than polite nods in the hallway. I told myself it was natural, workplace boundaries and all that, but the truth sat heavier. We'd been drifting apart for years, ever since her mother died. Maybe she blamed me for something. Maybe I'd failed her in ways I couldn't even name. Morrison! A younger voice cut through my thoughts. Jake from maintenance stood at my station, looking uncomfortable. They want you upstairs, HR office. I felt my hands slow on the controls, muscle memory taking over while my mind raced. What for? Didn't say. Just said to come up when you finish this batch. Bill shot me a questioning look. Probably some pension paperwork, he offered. You know how they love their forms. I nodded, though something cold was settling in my stomach. In all my years here, I'd been called to HR exactly twice. Once when I started, once when Margaret had her accident and I needed emergency leave. I finished the batch with mechanical precision, my hands steady even as my mind churned. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt longer than usual. I'd always preferred the factory floor. Honest work, honest noise, honest sweat. Up here, everything felt muffled, artificial. The carpet absorbed sound, the fluorescent lights hummed with corporate sterility. Megan's office door stood open. She looked up as I approached, and for a moment I saw my late wife's eyes staring back at me. The same deep brown, the same intelligence, but none of the warmth I remembered from either of them. Dad. Her voice was professional, distant. Please, sit down. I lowered myself into the chair across from her desk, noting how she'd arranged everything. Family photo turned away from visitors, degree certificates perfectly aligned, a small cactus that probably required no care at all. Everything in its place, nothing messy or unpredictable. Is this about my pension paperwork? I asked, trying to keep my voice light, because I thought everything was all ready. No, Dad. She folded her hands on the desk, and I saw her mother's hands. Long fingers, no wedding ring yet, perfectly manicured. This is about your employment status. I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. The words hung in the air like smoke from an industrial accident. For a moment, I couldn't process them. 23 years, 5 days from full benefits, and my own daughter was sitting across from me with corporate composure, delivering the blow that would shatter everything I'd worked toward. Effective immediately, she continued, her voice steady as a machine. The company is restructuring, and we need to make some difficult decisions. You're just washed up, Dad. This place needs the young, not fossils like you. The words echoed in my head like a machine that had thrown a bearing, loud, jarring, wrong. I stared at my daughter across the polished desk, searching for any trace of the little girl who used to bring me coffee in a thermos when I worked late shifts. That girl was gone, replaced by this cold professional who spoke about my life like it was just another line item on a budget report. I don't understand, I said slowly, my voice remarkably steady. 5 days, Megan. I have 5 days until my full pension kicks in. What's the real reason? She didn't flinch. If anything, her posture straightened like she'd been waiting for this question. The real reason is exactly what I told you, Dad. He needs to bring in younger workers, fresh blood, people who can adapt to new technologies, new methods. Is this personal? The question came out before I could stop it. Some kind of grievance you have with me? For the first time since I'd sat down, something flickered in her eyes. Not warmth, something sharper, more satisfied. No, Dad, this isn't personal. This is business. Pure and simple. She leaned back in her chair, and I caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach turn. She was enjoying this. I'm the head of human resources now. It's my job to make these decisions, to determine who adds value to the company and who doesn't. The pause before that last word was deliberate, calculated. She wanted me to feel it. You know, she continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone, it's actually quite liberating, having this kind of authority, being able to choose who stays and who goes. And yes, if you must know, there is a certain satisfaction in being the one to make these calls. I felt something shift inside me, like tectonic plates finding a new position. She wasn't just firing me, she was savoring it. My own daughter was taking pleasure in destroying 23 years of my life, in stealing my pension, in reducing me to nothing. She slid a manila folder across the desk. I need you to sign these termination papers, effective immediately. There's a small severance package, much smaller than your pension would have been, of course, but the company is being generous considering the circumstances. I looked down at the folder but didn't touch it. No. I'm sorry. I said no. I'm not signing anything. Her professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Dad, you don't really have a choice here. You can sign these papers and leave with some dignity, or security can escort you out. Either way, you're done here. For what? I asked, my voice rising slightly. What exactly have I done to deserve this? 23 years of perfect attendance, no safety violations, no complaints from supervisors. What possible justification? I don't owe you a justification, she cut me off, her voice cold as winter steel. I'm not your daughter right now, I'm your HR director. And as your HR director, I'm telling you that your services are no longer required. But there was something in her eyes, something she wasn't saying. A secret she was holding back, enjoying the power of withholding it. I could see it dancing behind her pupils, some reason, some motivation that went deeper than corporate restructuring. There's something else, I said quietly. Something you're not telling me. She smiled then, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen on my daughter's face. Let's just say that sometimes people get exactly what they deserve. And sometimes life comes full circle in the most unexpected ways. I sat there for a long moment, studying this stranger who shared my blood. The little girl who used to cry when she accidentally stepped on ants had grown into someone who could crush a man's life and smile while doing it. The realization was more devastating than the firing itself. Slowly, I stood up from the chair. I didn't touch the papers. I didn't say another word. I simply looked at her one last time, really looked at her, and then I turned and walked out of her office. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a mine shaft. Each floor that passed marked another layer of earth between me and the surface, another degree of separation from the life I'd known. By the time the doors opened onto the factory floor, I felt like a different man entirely. Bill was still at his station, but the easy camaraderie from earlier felt like something from another lifetime. When he saw my face, his hands slowed on his machine. Well, he called over the noise. Everything all right with the paperwork? I walked over to him, my steps careful and measured. The familiar sounds of the factory, the sounds that had been my world for over 2 decades, seemed muted now, distant. She tried to fire me, I said simply. Bill's hand stopped moving entirely. What? My own daughter, I continued, my voice eerily calm. Just tried to destroy my pension, my benefits, everything I've worked for, 5 days before retirement. She sat there in her air-conditioned office and told me I was washed up, that this place needs young blood, not fossils like me. Bill's face went through several expressions, confusion, disbelief, then a slow-burning anger. Jesus Christ, Fred, your own kid? She wanted me to sign termination papers, right there on the spot. I shook my head slowly. 23 years, Bill. 23 years, and she looked me in the eye and called me worthless. But why? What the hell happened between you two? That was the question, wasn't it? What had I done to earn such calculated cruelty from my own flesh and blood? What had transformed my daughter into someone who could take pleasure in my destruction? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out. The words surprised me as I said them. Until that moment, I'd been reeling, struggling to process what had just happened. But now, standing here among the honest noise and honest work of the factory floor, something was hardening inside me like molten steel finding its final form. Megan thought she held all the cards. She thought she could destroy me with impunity, safe in her position of power, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left me with nothing to lose. I sat in my truck outside the factory gates for a full 10 minutes before starting the engine. The parking lot was familiar. Every pothole, every painted line, every oil stain from 23 years of driving in and out of this place. Now, it felt like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and scrolled to David Kellerman's number. David had handled my divorce paperwork 15 years ago, helped me navigate Margaret's medical bills when the insurance company tried to deny coverage. If anyone could make sense of this mess, it was him. Fred Morrison. His voice was warm, familiar. Haven't heard from you in a while. How are you holding up? Not good, David. I need some legal advice about employment law. There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the shuffle of papers, the distant hum of office life. What happened? I told him everything. The call to HR, Megan's cold professionalism, the timing just 5 days before my pension vested. I told him about the termination papers I'd refused to sign, about the vague mentions of restructuring. David was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who'd seen this story too many times before. Fred, I'm going to ask you something very important. Did you sign anything? Any documents at all? No. Nothing. Good. That's very good. I could hear him typing. What you're describing, it's not uncommon. Companies sometimes engage in what we call pension dumping, terminating employees just before they become eligible for full benefits. There was a big case about this. Workers at a steel plant in Pennsylvania. Company fired over 1,000 employees within months of their pension eligibility. My grip tightened on the phone. Is that legal? Technically, yes, if they can show legitimate business reasons, but the timing makes it suspicious. The fact that they're targeting you specifically, just days before your benefits vest. He paused again. Did your daughter give you any documentation about this company-wide restructuring? Layoff notices for other employees? Anything that would support their claim? I thought back to the sterile conversation in Megan's office. No, she just said the company needed young blood, that I was washed up. Shit. David's professional demeanor cracked slightly. Fred, I'm sorry, but this sounds personal. And if it's personal, wrapped up in company policy, that's where things get complicated. What do you mean? Age discrimination is illegal under the ADEA, Age Discrimination in Employment Act. But proving it can be tricky, especially when family relationships are involved. The good news is that you didn't sign those termination papers. That gives us room to maneuver. I felt something that might have been hope stirring in my chest. So what do I do? First, document everything. Write down exactly what was said, when, by whom. Second, don't sign anything, and I mean anything, without running it by me first. Third, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Megan's name appeared on the screen, and I felt my jaw clench. David, I've got to take this. It's her. Be careful what you say. Don't admit to anything. Don't make any threats. Just listen. I switched calls. Hello, Megan. Dad. Her voice was different now, less corporate, more urgent. I heard you left the building without signing the paperwork. We need to resolve this quickly and quietly. Do we? Yes, we do. Look, I know this is difficult, but fighting this won't help anyone. The company has made its decision. The best thing you can do is make this transition as smooth as possible. I stared out at the factory through my windshield. Workers were beginning to stream out as the shift change approached. These were my people, men and women who understood the value of honest work, who knew the difference between what was right and what was expedient. Smooth for who, Megan? For everyone. For the company, for you, for our family. There was something in her voice now, almost pleading. If you just sign the papers, we can put this behind us. You'll get the severance package, and you can move on with your life. Move on with my life. I repeated the words slowly. You mean move on without the pension I've earned, without the benefits I've paid into for 23 years. Dad, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be? My voice was rising, but I caught myself. David's warning echoed in my head. Megan, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I worked at that plant for 23 years. See, I never missed a day unless someone in our family was dying. I trained half the people working there now. I've earned every penny of that pension. The company. The company can restructure all it wants, but not 5 days before my benefits vest. Not like this, and not through my own daughter. There was silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice had returned to its corporate coldness. I was hoping we could handle this amicably, but if you want to make this difficult, that's your choice. Just understand that the company has resources you don't. Legal resources, financial resources. This doesn't have to be a war, Dad, but if that's what you want. The threat hung in the air between us like smoke from a chemical fire, toxic, unmistakable. Is that what this is about? I asked quietly. Resources? Power? This is about business, pure and simple. No, I said, my voice steady as a plumb line. This is about character, and yours is showing. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with something else entirely. Rage, yes, but more than that. Clarity. For the first time since walking into that sterile office, I could see the situation clearly. This wasn't about restructuring. This wasn't about the company needing young blood. This was about my daughter using her position to settle some score I didn't even know existed. And she thought she could intimidate me into compliance with talk of legal resources and corporate power. She was about to learn that some things can't be bought, threatened, or restructured away. Some things have to be earned. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Megan's voice, cold, calculated, threatening. By 5 a.m., I gave up on rest and called David Kellerman's office, leaving a message on his voicemail. He called back an hour later. Fred? Jesus, it's early. Everything all right? No, it's not. I was pacing my kitchen, coffee growing cold on the counter. David, I need to tell you something. This isn't about company restructuring. This is personal. My daughter has some kind of grudge against me, and she's using her position to settle it. I told him about the phone call, about Megan's threats of corporate resources, about the satisfaction I'd seen in her eyes when she tried to fire me. David was quiet for a long moment. That changes things significantly. If we can prove this is retaliation or personal animus disguised as business decisions. What do I need to do? First, we need documentation. Everything. Phone calls, emails, any written communication. Do you have a way to record conversations? My phone has a recording app. Good, but be careful. Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state. You can't record her without permission. However, you can document what she says immediately after conversations. Time, date, exact words if possible. I grabbed a pen and started writing. What else? Witnesses. Anyone who heard her make those threats or saw her behavior. The more people who can testify to her state of mind, the better our case becomes. And then what? Then we file complaints. EEOC for age discrimination, potentially a civil suit for intentional infliction of emotional distress, maybe even abuse of corporate authority, depending on what we find. My grip tightened on the pen. David, I want her held accountable. She threatened me with the company's legal resources because she thought I'd be too scared to fight back. I want consequences. Fred, I understand your anger, but she's not going to back down. She made that clear, so neither am I. David sighed. All right, but understand, this is going to get ugly. Corporate legal departments don't play fair, and when family is involved, he paused. Start with the documentation. Get me everything you can. And Fred, be careful. If she's willing to destroy your pension, she might be willing to do worse. I spent the morning writing down everything I could remember. Exact words, times, the look in Megan's eyes when she delivered that final threat. The act of writing it down made it more real, more concrete. This wasn't just hurt feelings or family drama. This was systematic destruction wrapped in corporate policy. Around noon, I drove to the factory. My access card still worked. Megan probably couldn't revoke it without the termination paperwork being signed, but I waited in the parking lot for the shift change anyway. I needed to talk to Bill, to anyone who might have heard something. Bill emerged with a group of other workers, his face grim when he spotted me. Fred, thank God. I was worried they might have done something to you. What do you mean? Word got around about what happened. Your daughter sent out a memo from HR this morning about ongoing personnel decisions and the need for all employees to focus on their responsibilities rather than workplace gossip. He shook his head. Basically told everyone to shut up and mind their own business. My stomach dropped. She's trying to isolate me. Looks like it. But Fred, you should know, not everyone's buying it. A lot of us have been here long enough to know bullshit when we smell it. Bill, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you hear anything about company-wide layoffs? Any talk of restructuring before yesterday? He looked around, then stepped closer. Nothing. Not a damn word. And trust me, that kind of news travels fast around here. Would you be willing to say that officially? In a legal document? Bill's face went pale. Jesus, Fred, you're really going to fight this? I am, but I understand if you can't. No, it's not that. He ran a hand through his graying hair. It's just, I've still got 3 years left until my pension vests. If I piss off the wrong people, I felt the weight of his dilemma. This was exactly what Megan was counting on, that people would be too scared to speak up, too worried about their own futures to risk helping me. I get it, Bill, I really do. But, he continued, his voice strengthening, what they did to you is wrong, and if it can happen to you, it can happen to any of us. He straightened his shoulders. Yeah, Fred, I'll testify. Put it in writing. Whatever you need. A warmth spread through my chest, the first good feeling I'd had since walking into Megan's office. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Word is your daughter's been busy. She called a meeting with some of the supervisors this afternoon. Nobody's talking about what was discussed, but people are nervous. The warmth vanished. What kind of meeting? The kind where people get reminded about company loyalty and the importance of not spreading rumors. I spent the rest of the afternoon making calls, reaching out to other long-term employees, trying to build a picture of what was really happening at the plant. The results were mixed. Some people, like Bill, were outraged and willing to help. Others were too frightened to get involved. A few seemed to believe the company line about restructuring, but nobody, not one person, had heard anything about layoffs before Megan tried to force me out. By evening, I had a stack of handwritten notes and the beginnings of a witness list. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I was photographing the documents to send to David when my phone rang. Megan's name appeared on the screen. Hello. Dad. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear something underneath. Frustration, maybe even a hint of desperation. I think we need to talk. I thought we already did. This afternoon, I had to waste time explaining to my supervisors why there's been unusual activity around your attempted termination. People asking questions, making inquiries about company policy. I felt a small surge of satisfaction. Is that a problem? It's disruptive, and it's unnecessary. Dad, I'm trying to keep this contained, but if you keep stirring things up, I won't be able to control how this gets handled. Control how it gets handled? I repeated. Megan, you tried to fire me 5 days before my pension vested, and I refused to sign your papers. You think I'm going to quietly disappear? I think you should consider what's best for everyone involved, including yourself. There was something different in her voice now, not the corporate confidence from before, but something more personal, more urgent. Are you worried, Megan? A pause. I'm trying to protect you from making a mistake you'll regret. The only mistake I've made, I said quietly, is trusting that my own daughter would have some basic decency. Dad, I'll see you in court. I hung up before she could respond. I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone. She was feeling pressure. That much was clear. The questions from employees, the attention from supervisors, it was making her nervous. She was trying to contain something that was starting to spread beyond her control. But this was still her personal war, fought with HR policies and employee intimidation. She hadn't escalated to corporate lawyers yet, which meant either she was confident she could handle this herself, or she was trying to keep the real reasons for my attempted firing hidden from upper management. Either way, it told me something important. She had vulnerabilities. The answer came to me while I was going through Margaret's old papers, looking for anything that might help David build our case. I'd been avoiding this particular box for 5 years, the one filled with medical records, insurance claims, and the endless paperwork that accumulates when someone you love is dying slowly. But there it was, buried beneath hospital bills and prescription receipts. A letter from Megan, written 6 months before her mother's death. The envelope was addressed to Margaret, but the contents were meant for me. Mom, I can't watch him do this to you anymore. He works those long shifts while you're here suffering. And for what? So he can feel important fixing his precious machines while you waste away? He could have taken early retirement. He could have spent these months with you instead of leaving you alone with strangers in white coats. But no, his job matters more than you do, more than we do. I'll never forgive him for choosing that factory over his own wife. My hands trembled as I read it again. Then a third time. The letter was dated 3 weeks before Margaret had asked me, begged me, not to take early retirement, not to sacrifice my pension for her medical bills. She'd made me promise to keep working, to secure our future, to not throw away 18 years of contributions for what she called a few difficult months. Megan had never known about that conversation. She'd never known that her mother had fought me on it when I'd suggested taking early retirement to care for her. To Megan, it must have looked like I'd chosen the factory over my dying wife. And now, 5 years later, she was using her position to destroy the very pension her mother had died protecting. The irony was so bitter, I could taste it. My phone rang, jarring me from the revelation. Bill's name appeared on the screen. Fred, you need to know what's happening here. What's wrong? It's about your situation. Word's gotten out, really gotten out, and people are pissed. I could hear the noise of the factory floor in the background, the familiar sounds of honest work continuing despite the drama unfolding in the offices above. What do you mean? This morning, your daughter called another meeting, tried to get the supervisors to sign some kind of statement saying the restructuring was necessary and legitimate. But here's the thing, half the guys refused. My heart started beating faster. Refused? Tommy Martinez flat out told her he wouldn't put his name on a lie. Said in 25 years here, he's never seen any evidence of the restructuring she's talking about. Then Mike Riley backed him up, said the same thing. And she threatened them right there in the meeting, said anyone who didn't support company decisions might find themselves in similar situations to yours. The breath went out of me. She was escalating, making bigger mistakes, threatening more people. Jesus. It gets worse, Fred. After the meeting, Martinez went straight to plant manager Davidson, told him everything about the timing of your situation, about the threats, about how there's no actual restructuring happening. Plant manager Davidson. I'd worked under him for 15 years. He was old school, fair, the kind of man who believed in earning respect rather than demanding it. What did Davidson say? He called an emergency meeting with corporate HR, not your daughter's department, the real HR from headquarters. They're sending someone down tomorrow to investigate what they're calling irregularities in personnel management. I sank into my kitchen chair, Margaret's letter still clutched in my other hand. The fractures were spreading faster than Megan could contain them. There's more, Bill continued. Davidson asked Martinez to make a list of everyone who could verify that there's been no talk of restructuring. The list, it's got 32 names on it, Fred. 32 people willing to go on record that your daughter lied about company policy. My God. She's in deep shit, Fred. Word is, corporate's not happy about this investigation. Apparently, using company resources for personal vendettas is the kind of thing that gets people fired. Really fired. Not the fake kind she tried to pull on you. I thought about the letter in my hand, about the misunderstanding that had poisoned my relationship with my daughter for 5 years, about how her grief and anger had curdled into something vindictive and destructive. Bill, I need to ask you something. When my wife was sick, did people at the plant talk about it? About me staying at work instead of being with her? There was a pause. Fred, we all knew you wanted to be there. Margaret told everyone who'd listened that you'd offered to take early retirement, that she'd made you promise not to. She was proud of that, man. said she wouldn't let you sacrifice your future for what couldn't be changed. My eyes closed. Margaret had protected me even from my own daughter's judgment, and Megan had never known. She used to say, Bill continued, his voice gentle, that keeping you working was the last gift she could give you, that watching you throw away your pension would have made her suffering meaningless. The letter felt heavy in my hand, 5 years of accumulated resentment based on a fundamental misunderstanding. My daughter had spent half a decade hating me for something that had never been true. Fred, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. Look, I know this is family stuff, and I don't pretend to understand all of it, but what she's doing to you now, it's wrong, and it's getting noticed by people who matter. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at Margaret's letter. The pieces were falling into place. Megan's coldness, her satisfaction when she'd tried to fire me, her determination to destroy the pension her mother had died protecting. She thought she was avenging her mother. She had no idea she was betraying everything Margaret had fought for. But now her personal war was colliding with corporate reality, threatening supervisors, lying about company policy, using HR resources for personal vendettas. These were firing offenses that even family connections couldn't protect her from. The investigation would expose everything. Her lies about restructuring, her abuse of authority, her attempts to intimidate employees. Corporate HR would ask questions she couldn't answer, demand documentation she didn't have, and somewhere in that investigation, the truth about her motives would come out. The personal animus, the family grudge, the 5-year campaign of cold resentment finally expressing itself through corporate policy. I picked up my phone and called David. I found out why, I told him, and I think I know how this ends. The fracture lines were spreading through everything, through the plant, through corporate, through the careful wall of lies Megan had built around her actions. Soon the whole structure would collapse. The only question was whether our relationship could survive the ruins. I sat in my truck outside Megan's apartment complex for 20 minutes, the letter burning like evidence in my jacket pocket. The corporate investigation was scheduled for tomorrow morning, and I knew that once it started, there would be no going back. Careers would be destroyed, relationships severed permanently. But tonight was still mine. The apartment building was one of those modern complexes with too much glass and not enough character, the kind of place young professionals chose because it looked successful in photographs. I'd helped her move in 3 years ago, back when we still spoke in polite, distant sentences about weather and work schedules. She answered the door in a business suit, probably just home from another late evening at the office, trying to contain the damage from these events. Dad? Her face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally resignation. What are you doing here? We need to talk, Megan. Really talk. Not as HR director and employee, but as... I paused, searching for words that hadn't been poisoned by years of careful distance, as father and daughter. She glanced down the hallway as if checking for witnesses, then stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Clean lines, muted colors, everything in its designated place. No family photos visible, no warmth that couldn't be purchased from a catalog. If this is about tomorrow's investigation, she began, her voice taking on that familiar corporate tone, you should know that I've already... It's about your mother. I pulled the letter from my pocket, watching her face change as she recognized her own handwriting. It's about this. She stared at the envelope like it was something radioactive. Where did you get that? It was in my medical files. Has been for 5 years, apparently. Got mixed in with other paperwork. I held it out to her. Do you remember what you wrote? Her composure cracked just slightly. Yes, I remember. Then you remember accusing me of choosing my job over your dying mother. Because you did. The words erupted from her with 5 years of accumulated pain. You went to that factory every single day while she wasted away in that hospital bed. Every single day. Even when the doctors said she only had weeks left, you were still punching that clock like nothing had changed. I watched my daughter's professional mask dissolve, revealing the grieving 20-something who had never understood her father's choices. The angry young woman who had carried this burden alone for half a decade. Megan, I said gently, did your mother ever tell you about our conversation? The one we had about my retirement? What conversation? She made me promise not to take early retirement, made me swear it. I sat down heavily in one of her sterile chairs. I went to her 3 different times, begged her to let me leave the plant, to spend every remaining moment with her, and 3 times she refused. Megan's face went very still. What do you mean, refused? She said watching me throw away my pension would make her feel like her illness had destroyed our future. She said the last gift she could give me was making sure I kept working toward full benefits. My voice caught slightly. She said she couldn't bear the thought of me being an old man with nothing because I'd sacrificed everything for a fight we couldn't win. I watched the words hit her like physical blows. Her carefully constructed narrative, 5 years of justified anger, was crumbling in real time. She never told me that. She was protecting you from having to carry the weight of that decision, just like she was protecting me from the guilt of taking early retirement. I leaned forward, desperate to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. Megan, every day I didn't spend at that hospital felt like I was dying too, but I'd made her a promise, the last promise I'd ever be able to keep. Tears were streaming down her face now, her professional composure completely abandoned. I didn't know. God, Dad, I didn't know. How could you? She asked me not to tell you, said it would be our secret. I felt my own eyes burning. For 5 years, I've watched you turn cold toward me, and I never understood why. I thought maybe grief had just changed you. I hated you, she whispered, the words barely audible. I hated you for leaving her alone. I hated you for caring more about that job than about us. And when I got the position in HR, when I realized I had the power to, she covered her face with her hands. Oh God, what have I done? You tried to protect your mother's memory the only way you knew how. No, I tried to hurt you. I wanted to destroy the thing you'd chosen over her. I wanted you to lose everything, just like we lost her. She looked up at me through her tears. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I moved to the couch where she was sitting, the first time we'd been this close in years. Tentatively, I put my arm around her shoulders, and she collapsed against me like the little girl who used to fall asleep watching TV in my lap. I know you are, and I forgive you. We sat there for a long time, both of us crying for different reasons. Her for the years of misplaced anger, me for the daughter I'd thought I'd lost forever. Dad, she finally said, her voice muffled against my shoulder, about tomorrow's investigation. I can fix this. I can tell them it was all a mistake, that I was wrong about the restructuring. I stroked her hair the way I used to when she was small and had nightmares. Sweetheart, I don't think it works that way anymore. What do you mean? 32 people are willing to testify that there was no restructuring. You threatened supervisors, you used company resources for personal reasons. I sighed. Even if I withdraw every complaint, even if I refuse to pursue any legal action, the damage to your credibility is already done. She pulled back to look at me. You mean? I mean, your career at that company is probably over. Corporate doesn't forgive abuse of authority, especially when it becomes public knowledge. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I've destroyed everything, haven't I? You made mistakes, big ones. But you're young, you're talented, and now you know the truth about your mother. That's not nothing. Will you really not pursue legal action, even after everything I tried to do to you? I thought about David's carefully built case, about the EEOC complaint we'd been preparing, about the opportunity for financial compensation and public vindication. Then I looked at my daughter's tear-stained face and saw Margaret's eyes staring back at me. No lawsuits, no legal action, but I'm going back to work on Monday and I'm getting my full pension when it vests. She nodded emphatically. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need from me to make that happen. What I need from you, I said, is to start over. Really start over. No more corporate politeness, no more careful distance. I want my daughter back. I want that too, she whispered. I've missed you so much, Dad. I've missed having a father. Then we'll figure it out. We'll have to. Your mother would haunt us both if we didn't. That earned me a watery laugh, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. There's going to be a lot to work through, I warned her. A lot of conversations we should have had years ago. I know. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But Dad, I'd like to try. if you're willing." I pulled her close again, holding my daughter for the first time since her mother's funeral. Outside, the corporate investigation waited. Her career hung in the balance. There would be consequences for both of us. But for the first time in 5 years, we were a family again. That was worth more than any pension. To hear the next story, click the box on the left, and as always, thank you for watching.